Hey Squishies, back again with another vlog. This is Steven Universe, Season 4, episodes I've completely lost count because I don't know how to count this one. It's the zoo arc. Xfinity has it up as 5 separate episodes and also one long episode called The Zoo, which is also the title of the 4th episode. So I've decided to just review it as one long episode because that really feels like what it's intended to be. So let's dive in. A few different things strike me about this. The big one is that it gives us a very different picture of the diamonds than we've had before. It's got a lot more empathy for them than past episodes, which, because of some stuff that I've been sort of on the edges of that's been happening in the world, I feel like I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think there's a bad tendency to confuse empathy with sympathy in a lot of different ways. And one of the ways is that when somebody shows empathy toward an enemy, that gets confused for sympathy, and they get accused of condoning or supporting that enemy. And that's a real problem, because we need to have empathy for everyone. Not everybody is able to do that for very good reasons. It's not a bad thing. Everybody has people that they just can't have empathy for, either because they've been so badly hurt or because there's just too much of a gulf in the kind of world that you live in, or so forth. I mean, nobody has absolute perfect empathy, which is why sometimes you rely on other people and their empathy. But you do need to have, as a group, we need to have empathy for everyone, because you need to have empathy for your friends so that you can be good to them, because you don't know what good to them means unless you know how they feel about things, and that's empathy. You need to have empathy for strangers so that you can accept them and understand them. And you need to have empathy for your enemies so that you know where they're vulnerable. In all senses of the word. Without empathy for your enemies, you don't know where to hit them to hurt them. You also don't know where some of them might be able to come around, And again, I'm not saying, if somebody has horribly wronged you, it is 100% okay to not have any empathy for that person. The problem is when you start demanding that other people have no empathy for that person, because at that point you're confusing empathy for sympathy. It is okay to expect people to not be sympathetic toward people that, do enormous amounts of harm to others. I am 100% okay with nobody having any sympathy whatsoever with the Diamonds. I have no sympathy for the Diamonds. But I have empathy. I understand that Blue Diamond is really grieving, that Yellow Diamond is also grieving, that they have very different styles of grieving that are frustrating one another, But just because I understand these things doesn't mean I have to condone their actions. It doesn't mean I have to agree with the conclusions they draw from those feelings or the behaviors that emerge from those feelings. And so there's that. And I think the makers of the show sometimes make the same mistake, because everybody makes that mistake on occasion. And so I think sometimes, Steven has empathy for everyone. He can be empathetic toward everyone. It's kind of his superpower. And that's awesome. But I think that the people making the show sometimes think that that's sympathy for everyone. But the thing is, like, so there's this thing in Doctor Who, which Phil Sandifer calls the problem of Susan, kind of copying Neil Gaiman's The Problem of Susan, referring to Narnia. The problem of Susan is the Doctor abandoned his very first companion. He left her behind and moved on. He therefore can never go back for an old companion. He can never return and pick them up again to have adventures once more once they're done. Because why not Susan? If he did it for them, why not her? And there's a similar problem with Steven Universe and Bismuth. Steven was not sympathetic to Bismuth. He wasn't even that empathetic to Bismuth. I don't think he ever completely understood where she was coming from. So that creates a real problem when Steven is sympathetic towards other people. It retroactively creates a problem. Why was he so willing to work so hard for Peridot, willing to, let Peridot out of her bubble and do stuff when he doesn't do that for Bismuth? Why don't they let Bismuth out of her bubble and stick her in some equivalent of the bathroom and let Steven, talk to her? Why doesn't Steven do that? And obviously the answer is because her voice actress is really expensive. But, should have thought about that when they made the character. So, you've got a similar problem here. There's a limit to how much empathy and sympathy can be shown to Blue and Yellow Diamond before the problem of Bismuth rears its ugly head. And they tread pretty close to that limit here. The song Yellow Diamond sings is magnificent. The way Patti LuPone gets across Yellow Diamond's pain and denial of that pain. Little details like confirmation that lapises were created to terraform. I'm happy with that. Or the way that the two pearls hang out on her hand and pose and sing like singers on a stage. Which really gives you a sense of how enormous the diamonds are. It's really well done, really well handled. But go back to, the first episode. Greg has great empathy for Blue Diamond. He understands how she feels because he's been there. And he says so. And they're able to connect over that. But Blue Diamond is still the worst, so she kidnaps him. That's how she responds to this empathetic connection. Not, maybe humans aren't worthless, and so maybe we should rethink destroying their planet. No, it's, this human I kind of feel something, a connection to, so I'm going to rescue just him. Tearing him away from his world and anything he might have cared about in that world. It's, Blue Diamond is still terrible. The diamonds are still terrible. The fact that, she's sad and we understand why she's sad doesn't change how terrible, what terrible things they've done. There's a lot of little details that I really like in this. I love when they're wandering around in Korea and they're in the animation studio, which presumably is the Korean animation studio where Steven Universe is animated. And they see the artist's table and there's drawings of Greg on it. In particular, I love the fact that the Greg actually on the drawing table the one that is being worked on, is Greg looking nervous in his red shirt with his arms akimbo, which means it's, from when he stands up and talks to Blue Pearl later in the same episode. She's drawing the future. And that's beautiful. Excuse me. Sorry about that. What else? Sorry, sneezing kind of broke my brain. I'll probably cut that. Oh yeah. I love, in the second episode, all the little distortions to their bodies. And the subtle little callback to it later. Amethyst loves being the same height as everyone else. She never wants to change that. And then later in the last episode of the arc, you have Carnelian so happy about not being the shortest anymore. Exactly what Amethyst was happy about. It's a way of connecting her to all those other Amethysts. I love in the third episode, the whole heist thing. It doesn't really come across as a heist. It doesn't quite have that energy to it, but it is still a really cool episode, mostly because we get to see just how terrible being a gem is for the crystal gems. We get to see why they rebelled, because it's nothing but 10 straight minutes of constant microaggression from Agate. And it's a perfect example of what microaggression is and why it sucks. Every little thing Agate does is degrading to Pearl or Ruby, or it's sucking up to Sapphire. Or it's being dismissive of Steven. Like, everything she does communicates there's a hierarchy, and I'm above you, and below you. She's just constantly belittling people, constantly praising the Blue Diamond, who badly wronged Ruby and Sapphire. It's infuriating for all of them. Pearl is treated as a servant. Ruby and Sapphire are furious about her constant mentioning of Pearl. Steven gets completely ignored. It's constraining and frustrating and maddening for them. And it's really well done. And it kind of serves as a lead-in to the human zoo, which is a gemified human society if I've ever seen one. Which, not that I've ever seen anything remotely resembling that, except for, real life. But that's a different story. These are humans whose lives are entirely regimented. But they're comfortable. And they've never hurt. Which is interesting, because I find it difficult to believe that, babies could exist without anybody knowing what hurt is. But they still form them up into mated pairs. So I have a nasty suspicion that somewhere in that zoo is a, not quite cloning facility, a fusant clone facility. Something that combines genetic material from paired up humans and generates... Actually, it could just be straightforward cloning. They could just produce, that would be why their names all have numbers. Although the numbers are a little too low for them to be like, Y6 is the 6th generation of Y. Even the it being the 25th generation of 6 doesn't really work, because it's been more than 25 generations since the end of the Gem War. And also, like, you got F3, and it's definitely been way more than 3 generations, and more than, what's that, 5? 6? 6. I don't know. It could still be cloning, and they pair them up not for, like, breeding purposes, but, you know, bonding and social stability purposes. I do like that they all choose Greg, you know. That was cute. His whole, you know, I haven't broken this many hearts since I had all my hair was a very cute line. Definitely one that stood out. Also, a really good line from Greg. You know, the 3rd craziest weekend I've ever had. That was great. Really curious now what the other 2 weekends are. One of them's got to be the weekend he spent wandering the unknown with his stepbrother. But who knows what the other is. Probably something to do with the fact that he is a former rock star who married a space alien. Slash superhero. She was slash superhero, not him, obviously. That seems like it could lead to some pretty wild weekends. What else? I think that's most of what I wanted to say. I mean, I could nerd out a little about the mention of light kites, which I suspect is referring to solar sails, which is some interesting implications. Solar sails are this thing from science fiction. As far as I know, I believe they're theoretically possible in real life. The idea is that light exerts pressure. We normally don't notice it because it takes a lot of light to exert a little pressure, and the effect just gets swamped out by stuff like air pressure and gravity and so on. But you can prove that light exerts pressure. You know, if you put, like, basically a windmill in a vacuum and make one side of each of the arms really reflective, you can actually get light to drive the thing around. So it's very, very weak, but it's steady and constant. And out in space, if you have a really big, really reflective, really lightweight surface, you could get light to basically drive it like a sail or a kite in the wind. And you know, it works a little differently because there's nothing to tack against, but you could still, in theory, use it to propel ships very cheaply from one planet to another. The only problem is it would be quite slow. You know, you'd accelerate as you go, but it's still very tiny acceleration, so it would be a very slow trip. But it's an extremely efficient way of doing, like, interplanetary and maybe even interstellar travel, if you're willing to spend a long time doing it. Like, say, if you're essentially immortal. The implication is that Era 1 didn't have faster-than-light travel. Pearl seems totally content to take decades to go from one star to another. There was the reference back in the episode where she and Steven built the rocket, and now here, she's like, oh, it's only 70 years. So, I mean, gems are long-lived enough that it would work. They could build an empire that's, you know, sublight. You know, it would take them decades to get from star to star. The expansion would be incredibly slow, but it could happen. And then somewhere after the rebellion on Earth, then they develop faster-than-light travel, which is what they use in this run of episodes. It's possible. It's kind of neat. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to mention about the pink quartzes that have been bubbled. I actually really hope that they are not like rose quartz, that they are not friendly. The reason being that they were all bubbled because Homeworld is terrible and thinks that all gems of a given type are the same. If it turns out that Homeworld is right, that would kind of undermine a lot of the show's themes. So I'm hoping, like, they try to unbubble some, obviously they're eventually going to go back. Those amethysts are too friendly, like, that's too potentially helpful. Amethysts who are mistreated and friendly to the crystal gems, like, that would be very useful for them. And there's those humans there in need of rescue. It would be incredibly difficult for them to integrate with human society, but they really do deserve the chance to run their own lives and to be helped to learn to run their own lives, because right now they're essentially trapped in childhood forever, and that's a nightmare. In fact, they're a lot like Stephen. What Stephen was complaining about at the beginning of the first episode. That the gems don't listen to him, that they are always trying to protect him from the world, with the result that there's so much he doesn't know. And he can't, and he wants to know. He wants to be able to make his own choices. He's growing up. And that's exactly what the situation is for these humans in the zoo. They are protected. They don't even know what it is to hurt. They're so protected from hurt. But the result is that they're perpetual children. Incapable of growing up, incapable of going out into the world, not even aware that they're in a prison. And I think for a lot of his life, Stephen wasn't aware that he was in a prison, because most children aren't. But as he's, gone into adolescence, he's become aware that he's trapped. Benevolently, but still, he's pushing against those bars. He's pushing against the rules that the crystal gems have laid down for him. And it's good that he is. That's healthy. Connie is doing the same thing with her parents. It's just part of growing up. And so I like that reflection between Stephen and the humans in the zoo. I think that's about everything I wanted to talk about. Great episode, 5 episodes, whatever you want to call it. Great Stephen Baum. And I'll see you all next time with some more Steven Universe. Bye.